leading activism, who are inspiring others, also have stuff going on behind the scenes.
Lovely activity, and I think the bonding of coming together and doing things when we all have different skills and abilities.
It is just so important that we have different voices in Parliament, and it is great to see that change, and especially more young voices being heard.
Kia ora and welcome. I'm very, very excited to be hosting another session of Youth Talk with the fabulous Megan Harvey. How are you guys doing today?
Great. How are you? How are you doing, Meg?
I'm having a good day. It's cold in Wellington. But
I was very appreciative of you guys marching through the cold, the freezing, not quite the snow, but kind of. And here's Harvey in a short sleeve t-shirt. I'm in woolen jumpers. It's a lot, but here we are. I'm very, very excited to be talking again about Youth Week, and today, fabulous youth who inspire us. This is inspired and brought by the wonderful Ara Taiohi, who've got the theme for 2024. We may not have it all together, but together we have it all. Mā whirangi tama roto kataka, ka puia ake ka pūrangi aho. With my slightly poor te reo translation, but we'll get there one day. So, are there any more ideas that you guys have had on this topic in the last couple of weeks, or ways that it's affected how you've seen the world?
Not too sure, but I don't know. When you said that, it really did bring back the last session. It is such a beautiful way and theme to discuss Youth Week, especially this year. I think, even though we don't have it all together, together we have it all.
I find it kind of funny because I think today we're probably going to be talking about people who seem to have it together a lot more than we do. But I think the theme, when we're having this conversation, the theme is really important to remember, that these people who even are leading activism, who are inspiring others, also have stuff going on behind the scenes,
Exactly. Yeah. No, I really love that.
True words from Meg, yeah. I think that's a very, 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 very good thing to keep in mind. I think I was thinking about the theme quite a lot in the last couple of weeks, and I had a really cool tramp with my flat over the weekend, which was quite intense. So good for me to challenge myself and stuff. But I was definitely one of the my friend said one of the physically weaker people on the tramp, but not mentally or emotionally necessarily. But it was a really, really, really lovely activity, and I think the bonding of coming together and doing things when we all have different skills and abilities, and so some people are better at some things, some people are better in other ways, and I think just coming together with all of kind of me really seeing how your vulnerabilities can kind of add to the strength and beauty of of collectors was a really beautiful thing. So I think it was a great theme for me in the last couple of weeks as well.
Where did you guys go tramping?
We went in the Tararuas to a place called Kaim Hut.
Oh, nice. Was it a long tramp?
It was it was basically all uphill Saturday and then all downhill Sunday.
Yeah.
It was we got to an alpine hut, so it was it was quite high.
Oh, so you just spend the night?
Yeah, so we spent the night in the hut. Yep, and it was good. It was my basically the second overnight stay I've done on tramping, and again it was very good going with my flat because some of them are very experienced. So we had to boil all our water and get all our stuff and ration our food and all those things, but it was fun. So yeah.
Did you manage to get a good sleep?
Okay. I definitely got an okay sleep. I got 2 dreams. So I was like, I must have been asleep long enough to dream twice. So, yeah. How about you guys? Have you done anything that's been challenging recently?
Challenging.
I feel like everyday life can also be, quite a hard challenge.
Yes, I mean, my daily 2-minute walk to school was challenging in my opinion, but...
Me going up the hill, I was like, wow, my fitness is really,
Yeah,
I had my first netball game this week.
Ooh.
And I have definitely, I thought I could stuff. I played tennis all over the summer. I'm already fit for netball. Nope, definitely not. But it was really fun. Whole new team, so all got to work together.
Ooh, wow.
It's really interesting because I'm playing in a fully across year 13, 12, year 11 team, and just to see the difference in the similarities between us all when some of us, our oldest players and youngest players, have 2 or 3 years apart, which is quite interesting.
And I guess, over the season you guys would get to bond quite a lot.
Yeah, definitely. We're playing a team who I think has definitely played together before, which is always tough, but yeah, it was really interesting to see how different people work together, how quickly some people gelled in terms of teamwork as well.
Are there any things that you really took away in terms of the similarities between you guys, or the differences between those I guess those 3 years, but they're quite significant years?
I think it's really interesting because especially at my school, if you've committed to netball all through year 13, it's definitely something you're quite invested in. And so just seeing the year 13s were able to guide the year 11s and stuff. But also, if you're in my team in year 11, it means you are really good at what you do, obviously. So seeing kind of the Tuakana-Taina relationship between these year 13s and year 11s was quite cool. And they're all really nice, so.
That's beautiful. That's really inspiring. It's really nice.
Yeah.
I think it's also really nice to have or not necessarily activities, but like things like that where different age groups, but especially ones that are kind of close like that but don't necessarily mix, coming together and just sort of having opportunities like that to kind of meet people and sort of maybe be mentored a little bit, kind of, as you said. It's just kind of, that's quite a lovely thing.
I agree, and those bonds are really important. It's nice to see that that's going good for you.
Speaking of mentoring, are there any inspiring youth who've either mentored us personally or kind of emotionally in terms of looking up to and inspiring us?
In terms of people I look up to, I'd say my number one kind of in terms of Aotearoa itself would be obviously people like kind of Chloe Schwarbrick, that kind of stuff. I'm quite politically minded, quite social justice, and just getting into politics that young. And also the newest member of the Te Pati Māori.
Ooh, I don't know who the newest member of Te Pati Māori.
Definitely should know her name, but she was because she's 21.
Yeah,
youngest
I saw
person
that.
ever in Parliament.
So impressive.
Oh.
And I think it's just really impressive to see a lot of youth voice coming across in Parliament.
Definitely. I feel like we've seen a big shift lately with more youth, involved in Parliament. People like Chloe Schwarbrick, and I think that is really great to have youth voices making those decisions, Yeah.
Definitely bringing fresh ideas as well.
Yes.
Because I feel like it can get a bit cyclical sometimes in Parliament. Just the same ideas, maybe things getting thrown around again and again. It's just, and bringing in some new, fresh new perspective is really important.
Yeah, no, definitely. I completely agree.
Yeah.
Her name for the record, Google tells me, hopefully correctly, is Hana Rafiti
Yes.
Kariariki Maipi, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, Maipi Clark, who was, as you say, she was 20 and 7 months when she was elected the youngest MP in New Zealand.
I know, I saw her during the last election, and it's so impressive.
And
she is so great at, articulating herself.
She's a beautiful speaker.
But it was very exciting seeing her when she did become, she was so young, when she got into office, and you're like, wow.
And she won her electoral seat, I think.
I think
won
she
my electoral
did.
seat, which is crazy. I watched her induction into Parliament. It was gorgeous. They did a full Whaikōrero welcome.
Yeah, no, it was.
What about you, Harvey? Any inspirational young people?
Say it like that.
The wink, I know you've got inspirational people in your
I know
life,
you've definitely got 30 people on mine.
Well, now that you said that, my mind is drawing a blank. Let me have a think.
Okay. Well, we can flash forward over to Rata.
Similar to you, I think. First person that came to mind for me was Sophie Hanford, who I guess she's basically my age, so slightly nearing the out of youth age from 12 to 24 from Aotearoa, but I think similar to similar to Hana Rafiti Kariariki, I think it's really important seeing those people in places, kind of opening those doors for the first time, because it really just tell you, oh, I could do that. I'd never sort of breaking those barriers and those kind of glass ceilings in terms of allowing yourself to think about possibilities of, oh, actually I could, there's no reason why I couldn't go and be a political figure or go do X, Y, Z, and think just sort of in terms of emboldening you. And so Sophie Hanford was the youngest elected councillor in New Zealand when she was elected councillor, and that was a couple of years ago, maybe in 2021 now.
Which
No,
council?
2019. Kapiti.
Yes, I feel like I think I've met her before.
Yes, no, she's incredible. She's absolutely
awesome.
incredible.
Does she do a lot of stuff with School Strike for
Yes,
Climate?
so her and Raven Maida were leading the School Strike for Climate, and so they were the people on the telly and stuff like that. And I just remember it was like, and especially I guess it was quite important for my journey in terms of School Strike for Climate and kind of the environmental wave that we're kind of leading sort of in my hometown as well. And I just remember turning on the TV and just watching News every morning and seeing them on there. I was like, oh my gosh, we need to make this happen. And it was just so inspiring seeing people who were literally my age at school and slightly older on TV and bring a call to action that we could all follow. And I think it's that thing of they're kind of similar enough to you, and yet doing such incredible things that it's sort of like, actually you can do these things, and no one's saying you can't. And she was led School Strike for Climate, very, very ably, been very politically active, but also is just a lovely person as well. She's just really, really sweet.
She's so nice.
I think it's lovely, like with MPs and stuff like that, as you were saying. I think probably I'd say the same thing about Chloe, in terms of when you are doing incredible things, but you also just can, from one perspective, I'm thinking can be very put together, but also obviously everyone has challenges, but I guess have the ability to balance both incredible action and being still retaining a lot of things like empathy and
definitely,
being able to connect with other people your age, even if you're trying to make a lot of change. That doesn't mean you leave anyone behind, kind of thing. So I think I really respect that about Sophie, in terms of that she's done a lot of work in connecting with different communities and people she's not necessarily who aren't just political leaders already and things like that, but bringing everyone with her. And I think we've seen that a lot in the climate movement. So
no, definitely. And I find that it is so important to have those role models, especially I don't know, just having people, especially people that young people can look up to, and like you were saying, can see themselves and maybe see like the possibilities that are out there. I think that is just so important.
Any role models for you?
Any role models that I can think of? I don't know why, but what came to mind was actually someone that I know from... they're really cool. They're actually one of my...
What's their name? Name drop them.
Okay, I wouldn't do that to them,
but... Do first name but not last names, and they'll know, and we'll all know, but,
We'll all know.
Okay, feel free not to.
I'm not too sure if I'll name drop them, but
Harvey's anonymous epic friend, you know who you are.
But I just find them quite inspirational, and I just think that the way they go about doing things and the way they advocate for those around them is just, I don't know, it's just really nice seeing that in your everyday life as well. And I don't know, that's what I thought.
What do we think makes like a good role model, as either as a youth or just in general?
A good role model. I think being a role model is the key thing. Being a role model is being able to listen. I think if you're not able to listen to others and have meaningful conversation, there's no way you can lead or be a good example for others. I think that'd be my key thing. I think that gets really muddled. I think I talked about this last week as well, but it's been coming up for me a lot lately. I think the idea of leadership gets really muddled with the idea of being the only person speaking, which isn't what leadership is about. All leadership's about democracy and delegation and having open conversation. And so I think if we want to have these role models, it's all about having that two-way channel of feedback and hearing things and taking things in as advice and that kind of stuff.
Why does either Chloe Swarbrick or the Te Pāti Māori MP, why do they inspire you, and do you have any ideas on why they might be good role models?
In terms of community outreach, like obviously I might not be as connected with some other MPs, but they definitely make sure to connect with all of the communities in a way that I don't think I see a whole lot of Parliament doing. And it's not just with their own communities either, it's with communities they may not have so much in common with, but it's all about listening to everyone across the motu and making sure that they're getting a wide open perspective on how we want our country run. Which I think also comes with, if you want your voice advocated for, you are more likely to advocate for others. That's why I think diversity in Parliament is so important.
I think that's a good point, especially in relation to having, I mean, it's one of the sad probably truths about the world and stuff like that in terms of empathy, that if you've overcome some things, you're probably more likely to be empathetic to other people who are struggling and things like that. And it's just sort of a reality of if you're used to campaigning for yourself and, needing to make a better world in terms of accessibility and inclusivity and things like that, that when you do have some of those things met, you're absolutely gonna try and reach to help those people who aren't in that position. So, yeah, no, definitely. And I feel like as well,
it's so important that we have those people with those experiences that, you know, can give them that different perspective, especially when they are in positions of power or they have the ability to make changes and advocate for those around them. And like you were saying, you know, it is just so important that we have different voices in Parliament, and it is great to see that change, and especially more young voices being heard.
What do we think, obviously you probably have many thoughts about this, me, but what do we think it would be like if we had like 16-year-olds in Parliament?
It's kind of like, I don't know why, but that made me think of, you know, can 16-year-olds vote?
Yes,
yeah,
make
that
it 16,
discussion.
yeah.
We had this conversation at Eve.
Yeah. I'm not too sure. I feel like it can be very easy to, you know, just kind of like throw it off and just be like, no, 16-year-olds, you know, the kids, which is definitely understandable if you like think of it from a certain standpoint. But in the end of the day, I think the good thing and the important thing about, you know, that we should have in the government is having all voices heard, and that includes our younger population as well, in whatever way that may be, you know. But yeah,
I think it's a slightly different conversation from the youth thing, because with the youth thing, a lot of the argument is, with the make it 16, the argument is that 16-year-olds should be able to vote because it genuinely, the divide doesn't make sense in terms of the which we talked about, the responsibilities they're allowed, and the making this clear differentiation between 18-year-olds and 16-year-olds that honestly isn't quite there in terms of responsibility. Yeah. I think with the in Parliament thing, the real problem we have with not enough youth in Parliament is there is a generational difference between how our country is working out for the youth now. I see a lot of jokes made about this on the internet, but I think it's really important, because when some of the people who are in Parliament were going into their adulthood, things like buying a house were so much easier. And you see that with, especially with MPs from Green Party and Te Pāti Māori, in terms of rent, rights for renters and making renting a lot easier and a lot kinder on the renters, is that it is harder to conceptualise for some of these older parliamentarians, because it wasn't how it worked when they were growing up.
And it ultimately doesn't affect them at the moment. You have some MPs who own like 7 houses.
Well, I think there were 2 MPs like 10 years ago who didn't have houses. The rest of them all owned a house. It's
honestly wild how you see that disparity. And of course, when they're the ones representing the greater population, when in this day and age, most of us, well, at least from my perspective, the idea of owning a home is like, that's never gonna happen. No. Like, it never once crossed my mind, just because, you know, the possibility is so far out there. Like, the chances of that happening are
just isn't a viable option for so many of our youth, and so many other people coming out of youth as well, now that we're going into it. I mean, just to make enough to get a deposit on a house is ludicrous. It just doesn't work. And
And as well, when we talk about the whole voting at 16, the thing is, we do allow 16-year-olds a degree of responsibility. They're allowed to drive, they're allowed to pay taxes, they're allowed to move out on their own, get married. There's a lot of things that kind of, I can see how it seems a bit strange how you can have those responsibilities without having your voice heard as well. I mean, lots of 16-year-olds work and actually, you know, put into the community and our country as a whole. So I don't see why they shouldn't also have that, you know, have their voice heard as well in our elections.
I think something interesting, not to disagree with any of your guys' points, I absolutely agree with all those. Something interesting that another incredible guest on Voice Whāraha brought up, Dr. Sherry Lee, so if you guys are watching, check that one out. I think something really interesting that she brought up was just kind of the political context of New Zealand and how you don't necessarily need to be in Parliament to make a difference. And I think that's one of those beautiful things about even the fact of, even if we take kind of our inspiring role models who were in kind of the, you know, in Parliament and in Council, even the fact of running, you can make your voice heard in that and kind of in the campaigning process and actually putting yourself out there as, I'm a young person with something to say. And there are so many people like that, I think, who are making a real impact. And I think that is something really, really cool about New Zealand. And same, I imagine, with your friend, it's like young people who are, I'm assuming your friend isn't in Parliament, young people who are role models, and just do lead and do connect with others and listen and all those things can make a really, really, really strong impact. And I think it's a really cool thing about New Zealand. So I don't know, do we think that, what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I feel like every young person has that ability to lead, and we see it oftentimes in our everyday life, honestly. And I feel like it is so amazing seeing people, even if we may not think of it as like, because usually when we think of change, we think of, I don't know, the big things. But the thing is, those small things are really important, especially for the community as a whole. Having people out there actually doing their best and living by the things that they value and advocating for those around them, that is so important. And I feel like it's amazing to see that, and hopefully that just keeps on going.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think being in Parliament is your only way to be a leader or make change in Aotearoa. I also don't think being a leader is the only way you need to make change. Especially in terms of, if you're talking about influence in a government level, there's so many petitions for all these causes out there. There are so many movements like Make It 16. Like the organiser, I knew one of the co-organisers last year, vaguely through connections, and he was 16 when he was running it, and he's not part of Parliament, but he's still advocating for the things he believes in. And also in terms of making change without leading, stuff like advisory groups and that kind of thing, like forming your communities and forming spaces you want to see around you are so important. And these kind of spaces where space is being carved for youth by these companies or by the government is such a good opportunity to have your voice heard. Like, I'm on an advisory group at the moment for designing a new youth hub in Wellington, and it's just such a cool opportunity to be able to make things that are designed with what we actually need in mind.
Yeah,
rather
I would.
Than what,
Yeah. No, I was just sorry if I interrupted you. I was just saying that I would completely agree, especially what you're saying about like youth advisory groups or just groups in the community that are like coming together. Because I feel like, I don't know, I was just saying that I feel like that is so important, and having those voices heard, especially in decision making, like you're saying, what you're doing with the youth hub. And I was just a quick question. What is the upcoming youth hub? I've actually never heard about that before.
It was the Wellington Council in their last, what it's called, the last survey of Wellington kind of thing. In terms of the change they were going to make for the youth of Wellington, is they were told there wasn't really a safe space for youth in Wellington, which I completely agree with. In terms of your kind of high school age students, there is just not really anyone to hang out, especially because once the library was taken away, there used to be a huge space for youth. And so they were asked to design a youth hub. And so they reached out, it's Te Hai Ohinga, I think. I definitely should know that one. But we're designing a youth hub. It should be open in July. Ooh. Fingers crossed. It's on Willis Street, so it's quite central. It'll be open to youth kind of after school times most of the week and like some weekends kind of stuff. And it's just supposed to be a space in terms of building that kind of Wellington youth community and providing a safe, secure space. I think it was really important. I'm very excited about it.
No, that is honestly so amazing. And like you're saying, that's a pretty big problem. There is not really like communal area for youth, especially, and it's not really like, most of the time you're just walking around because there is no place to kind of like go. And I think that is really amazing that you're part of the process of that. And so honestly, it's really cool.
Congratulations, Meg. That's really exciting. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. July, right?
July holidays. Hopefully. That's a fingers crossed day.
Do I still count as youth for that one, do we think?
Ooh, maybe. We'll see.
Maybe we'll see, yeah. No, that sounds epic. Thank you for advertising and being part of that as well.
Advertising, definitely.
Yeah. No, it's really cool. I remember a bunch of friends who were from Wellington talking about what their life was like as teenagers and growing up in Wellington and just spending heaps of time in the libraries and just like playing cards and reading, hanging out. Yeah. And it sounded really, really wholesome, as well as a nice place to actually be with friends and stuff like that. And I think, I don't really have I think Wellington doesn't have that, and I'm from Gisborne. We didn't have a lot of that, and I think it would have made a big difference in terms of stuff. The library was kind of a place where it's like old people would go and they'd tell you to shh, really really loudly, whatever, if you were making noise. So I think it's beautiful to have those spaces, and also just to see other people as well, and just be like, oh yeah, opportunities for new friends and meeting people and just seeing how people are living their lives and stuff like that. So yeah, sounds really really
yeah,
cool.
no, definitely, I definitely agree. Like, communal spaces are so important, especially in this day and age where it's really easy to feel so isolated and just not in touch. So I just think that is really amazing that they're doing that. It's a good change.
It's quite cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to briefly touch on the phone ban and how you found it. Just remind me with the isolation and the the digital online, the propaganda of you're only completely disconnected from other humans because of phones and technology at school. How have you found it?
It's a very relevant youth topic. This is my second week without my beloved cellular device.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think a lot of my friends is kind of trying not to admit that it is helping. I do think it's right for class, obviously, but I think teachers were doing that anyway. Obviously, now it is a bit more big because it's against the law, which is crazy.
Wait, was it actually passed as a law?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Right,
is it only in the classroom or outside of the classroom?
So this is what I'm kind of getting to, is that in the class, I think it is great for in-class. I think everyone's kind of paying more attention. I don't understand it for morning tea and lunches as much as you're making the point for social connection and stuff. It's just kind of backwards. It's just so obviously not with the times, and I think there were obviously no youth in that decision making giving any advice in that decision, or at least I haven't seen anything about it, because all that's been about kids will actually talk to each other, and I'm like, kids do actually talk to each other. We have friends, we hang out at lunchtimes and morning teas, and a lot of that, if you're thinking about how a phone would be involved, is about sharing and making connection and that kind of stuff. We are in such a digital world that I think it doesn't quite make sense to share that form of connection and fandom and community away, especially at morning tea and lunchtime.
Yeah, no, I would completely agree. And to be honest, I'm quite shocked that it is still in morning tea and lunchtime, because you'd think, like, you can say, the thing about, like, social connection and talking. But like you're saying, at least when I wasn't, people still talk to each other. Like, even if you have your phone, it doesn't, I mean, sure, I might look at my phone every now and then, but I'm still talking to you, I'm still here, you still have friends. So it's kind of interesting how that change was so drastic. And
I also even before the law came out, I was talking with my friends a lot about it, and it just doesn't quite work, because our schools already try to put this in place already. Many schools around the country do, and logistically it just doesn't work. I mean, hope my teachers or Mr. Luxon isn't watching. I still use my phone in class, and our teachers will just turn around and say, I'm not looking, Mr. Luxon, I'm not looking, and we'll take because we need our phones to take pictures of the board, to take pictures of the work we're doing, to take films for media, to take photos for any art classes we're doing, to get references, all of this stuff, and it just doesn't quite make sense to ban it when it's such a useful tool as well.
And that's a really good point. I remember, when I was studying, sometimes you just use your phone for the work, and even the teacher themselves asks you to do that, because like you're saying, it is such a good resource. You have so much different things at your fingertips, and I can understand how at times it's not good to have that in the classroom, which is why I respect that side of the decision. But I feel like it's much more complicated than just no phone or it's.
I think making it a government decision rather than a Ministry of Education or school by school decision was a bit weird.
Yeah.
Was my main thing that I took away from it. Because I think Wellington girls and a couple of schools around Wellington already had like phone hand-ins or phone locks away. We're just usually phone in our pocket, and now it's just phone in our bag, except everyone has it in their pocket anyway.
Yeah.
It's hard to police. It's more time on the teachers, which is
definitely a lot more work for the teachers. And I can understand how they would get so frustrated trying to make sure no one is on their phone, but
I think it's really interesting the way you phrased it in terms of kind of the idea is to try and, get rid of phones to bring back connection between friends and people and stuff like that, but actually you kind of explaining how it's there already was connection. It's not like we had an entire generation who didn't have friends. It's like people, young people still have friends, they still make connections. You're actually just blocking one form of that connection, which is through the digital platform. And I guess the same thing for, schoolwork. It's like, actually schoolwork was getting done and is getting done. We didn't see a massive decline, sort of with phones exactly, in terms of educational ability and skill. You're just actually now blocking or making it harder to use this one tool in relation to schoolwork. But especially definitely agree about policing. It would be quite a hard thing to do. But I know that's really interesting. Thanks for sharing your thoughts, Meg. First-hand experience. Yeah. I know.
And I think in terms of, like, I will admit that I have been spending more time doing my schoolwork because I don't have my phone next to me. Like, I don't think it was an entirely thoughtless decision. I just think it could have been done better, and I still think the focus should be way more on the things that are actually taking away from education, like the vaping problem. Like, it's genuinely just, in terms of reasons kids aren't doing their schoolwork, it's because they're out of class a lot of the time because they're addicted to nicotine. And I think there's been a lot of noise around an issue that is so much smaller than a lot of the other issues going on, especially with kids, not only vaping, but just the not wanting to come into school. School isn't a safe place. School isn't a place where they want to be. And that needs to change.
Yeah, no, completely. And like you're saying, there are so many more, like, important issues that should be addressed. So it's kind of weird that is what was the focus for so long. I don't know. It just feels like we're focusing on something that, to be honest, schools were already handling just fine. Because like you're saying, some schools would do what worked for the best for them, and some wouldn't, but...
I think it's quite an easy thing to latch on to because it's also something that parents are already worried about.
Yeah.
And that older generations are already worried about. All these kids addicted to their phones, it's always the phone.
Yeah.
And it's a scapegoat. And while I think it may have been part of the problem, I think it is a much wider issue. The fact that kids don't want to do their schoolwork, they don't want to come into school, they don't want to be learning.
And they don't feel safe.
And they don't feel safe in their schools.
No, completely. And I feel like it can be really easy for older generations to kind of get really scared about what's going on. Did you know in the olden days there used to be this really big fear about books? They used to say that all the younger generations are reading so much. They're
not interacting with each other, not playing, playing.
And I just find it so interesting how you see that happen so many times in history. Like, older generations will, kind of get scared and just spread that fear about things that, to be honest, sure, there are problems, but it isn't necessarily, the whole, you got to look at the bigger picture, in my opinion. Yeah.
100%.
What do we think, I don't know, the top issues, maybe at schools are for young people that actually should, are the ones that should be being addressed?
I don't know. I feel like the way school functions as a whole can oftentimes leave people to kind of fall between the cracks, and it doesn't really work in the way that it is only for certain types of people. And it's so hard to actually give people the support they need when it's one teacher with 28 students, And the thing is, kids these days are going through so much stress, that we've had a pandemic, global warming, so many things that make it so much harder than it used to be. You have so many things in society that are honestly just making it harder as a whole. And I feel like that's where you see that support is really needed for our youth these days. And like you were talking about, we have issues as the vaping, that is a problem for young people, and that's a whole other topic on its own. It's really bad. I was at the bus stop the other day, and there's just a 12-year-old in his school uniform vaping. I'm okay. Yeah. I mean, I can't say anything. I am someone who started vaping when I was younger. And so it's kind of interesting actually talking about the topic when I started vaping when I was around 14, 13. And now that I'm older, I look back and I do actually really regret that decision, because it was more of just, I don't know, you see everyone around you doing it, but the thing is, once you do get addicted to it, you get addicted. Oftentimes we think of it as a safer alternative to smoking cigarettes, but when it is, you get addicted to it, it is just as bad. And the effects on, this is the first generation that, are vaping the way that we do now. It wasn't as popular, so there aren't much studies that have been done on its effects. So it'll be kind of interesting seeing in the future what happens with everyone's health when you've been vaping for 50 years. But yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Harvey. I think it's really useful to hear perspectives from especially from people who it's like, oh yeah, that was me as well, and knowing, I guess also knowing how as you get older your kind of reflections on it change. And I think especially, at least with the pervasiveness for vaping, it's like in most schools that I was around, like there weren't 12-year-olds smoking cigarettes. I think we had gotten to a certain level of kind of reduction of trying to get to that smoke-free 2050 for New Zealand and things like that. That now we're definitely not on track for that. There's no way.
Crazy.
Yeah, and I mean it's like. It's flavored air. Come on. It's like
bubblegum flavor.
Bubblegum flavored air. It's so easy to access. Like there's obviously just a whole problem. And I feel like because it was introduced as like a safer alternative, we just weren't prepared to handle the way it's just spread so fast.
Yeah.
But, I still do vape because it is so hard to quit.
Yeah.
Especially when you've been doing it for years and that's what you see that like happening now. And you see, and first of all, money. They're not getting it from somewhere where, you have to pay for this. And it's just a whole other problem. But, yeah.
Yeah. I think that is a really, really, really important issue to think about, discuss. Maybe we can problem solve next time for that. But, again, like going back to some more hopeful things and also the theme and stuff like that, it's not about being perfect. And I think every stage of life, it's like everyone's got challenges, problems, and addictions are hard. I think everyone knows it's like
addictions are hard in general.
And there's
honestly.
It's like once you're in that situation, trying to get out in any way, shape or form, or even just kind of get through, it takes a lot of strength and emotional strength.
Yeah, and I feel like when we do discuss the problem, it is really important that we don't blame our youth for kind of like starting vaping and getting addicted to it, because like you are saying, it is like a problem. It's not something that
no one wants to have an addiction.
No one wants to have an addiction, and yeah, I completely agree with you on that one. But hopefully as time goes on, there are more supports in place and there are more things that we can do to kind of improve the problem. But
Well, that's a beautiful message for something to focus on for how we can make the world a better place for our youth. Yeah.
In terms of biggest problem for school, I was going on a much lighter note because it's just something I'm very annoyed about, is the teacher shortage is having much bigger impact than anyone is considering, especially in terms of an actual quality education. Even at some of the more private schools I know, but especially at like a public school like mine, we just don't have enough teachers, especially in terms of specialized departments like maths or science. Like we have PE teachers teaching science. It is just, in terms of, there's been a lot of complaining about how our nationwide grades are falling and all this dramatization. I'm like, well, if they're not getting taught by someone who actually knows what they're teaching, they're not going to be able to do well. I think it's a huge issue, especially with the teachers aren't going to be in it as much if they're not getting paid enough, that kind of stuff. And especially for some of the blaming that happened during the teacher strikes last year. Like there was a lot of the parents all annoyed at the teachers, or the government's kind of like putting this blame on the teachers, like, why you're taking away this education where they're striking for a normal amount of pay. They're striking to be paid enough to live
off of. I completely agree, but it's like those jobs like teachers, nurses, we kind of look up to them in a way as a society, but we also like, because we're like, oh, they work so hard even though they don't get paid, but like we just get used to that when in the end of the day, those jobs are like crucial. We need teachers, we need them. The job that they do is so important for society. So we have to treat them right if we want them to be here, if we want, like you're saying, our grades to be up, if we want students to be learning, we have to make sure that they're getting treated properly and that they have everything that they need.
It sounds like, I think, the conversation about what we need society-wise actually mirrors kind of a lot of the conversation for empowering youth as well, in terms of hearing voices and as prioritizing them and giving weight and meaning and worth to sections of society. It's like, well, it's the same thing for our jobs, for nurses, for teachers, for sections who might not, for sectors of the workforce who might be idolized in some ways, but actually not prioritized and valued in terms of pay and privilege and kind of what responsibilities and and rights you get, that actually matters a lot. So I think really interesting things to think on for how we can support our youth. And it sounds like, again, just kind of it's about bringing everyone together.
Yeah.
I think it's just about bringing everyone together and looking after everyone. And yeah, that's not quite the world we're living in at the moment, but hopefully we can continue to do that.
Yeah,
we're
definitely
running short of time. I'd love to keep chatting about this, but if you guys have got one message for youth or one thing you'd like to see happen for youth, we'd love to hear that.
Gotta make sure it's not the same as last week. I think... Oh, because not only is this Youth Week and its actual thing in the week right now, meta, it's Teacher Appreciation Week. So whether it be at school or actually just maybe your mentors in your everyday life or wherever you go, appreciate the people who guide you, who teach you. They're not the big bads, they're just there to do the job. And if you get to know them, they're pretty nice.
They're so amazing, babe. I love that message, honestly. I don't know if I can beat that, but I don't know, guys. I just think it's important that we keep on doing what we're doing and just take each day as it comes, honestly. Sometimes it can get hard, but it's important that we keep on working on ourselves and spreading that joy and just keeping on going.
That's beautiful. I think I'd say same for youth, but also for everyone, just you are enough as you are, and you don't need to be a perfect version of yourself or to feel like you have it all together, because the skills, the talents, and the vulnerabilities that you have are what make you special and unique and beautiful, and you bringing that to the world is so, so, so wonderful, and people love to see it, so just know you're enough.
Oh.
Thank you guys for an awesome discussion.
Thank you, Rafa.
No, it was so cool. So nice to see you guys again. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day or evening in this cold Wellington time. But yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you all for our lovely viewers and listeners. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as well. And hope you appreciate the youth in your life, or if you're a youth, hope you appreciate your mentors and the people around you as well. Thank you very much for watching. Ka kite.
Bye.